I think the first time that I had an awareness of transgendered people was in an episode of The Phil Donahue Show, which was sometime in the 80s. I can't remember whether the guest was Christine Jorgensen, the actress, or the tennis player Renee Richards. I remember her charm and humanity, and I also remember the bemusement and gentle hostility from the audience. That was more than 40 years ago, and while the media visibility for trans people has improved, the violence against trans women of color particularly remains at an all-time high. Here are 8 trans women of color whose murders remain unsolved. Courtney Ashe Key was shot and killed on Christmas Day 2020. Key was 25 years old and is survived by her mother, brother, and sister who loved her dearly. Police found Ms. Key with a gunshot to the head, lying in the street on the south side of Chicago. Police initially believed that Key had been the victim of a hit and run, but later they discovered the gunshot wounds. Ms. Key's close friend Beverly Ross said, "She just wanted to beat the odds and become something. When we talk about beating the odds, we're talking about a girl from the projects becoming something and defining herself." Ross said that Courtney was a sweetheart, hilarious, and the life of the party. The Chicago Police Department and health professionals listed Key as a male, even though Key identified as a woman, reporting, quote, "The man was pronounced dead at the scene," unquote. Though the police were investigating Key's death as a homicide, they wouldn't comment on the family's belief that it was a targeted hate crime. 28-year-old Tyianna Taylor holds the unfortunate distinction of being the first trans woman of 2021 to be murdered in Chicago. Alexander was one of 2 people who was shot and killed near a railroad line at West 75th Street in Chicago on January 6, 2021. Police say Alexander was shot from a passing silver car. Brandon Gowdy, age 31, was also shot in the incident and was taken to University of Chicago Medical Center, where he later died. Like Ms. Keys, Alexander was also misgendered originally by Chicago authorities, stating later they don't have a system for recording the gender of victims. Sally Brown, a public information officer for the Chicago Police Department, insisted they did not want to insult Alexander, but would be using her sex assigned at birth in documents. Alexander's friends and family took to social media to pay tribute to her. Her cousin wrote on Facebook, "I miss you so much. My heart is broken. I keep telling myself I'm going to be okay, but deep down I know I'm not. Why you? Such a sweet person with a good heart." 30-year-old Bianca Muffin Banks was formerly a homeless woman rebuilding her life. Banks was shot and killed in her apartment in Atlanta, Georgia, January 17, 2021. Police believe her killer was Moses Allen, who then took his own life. Banks and Allen's bodies were discovered by Banks' roommate, with whom she had often lived on the streets. Banks moved into this apartment just a few weeks before her murder. In 2021, police were investigating whether others were involved in Banks' murder, but they say the incident is likely to remain classified as a murder-suicide. Ms. Banks was a former foster care child who struggled with homelessness, an all too common occurrence amongst transgendered people. The agency helping Banks said Muffin hadn't been in that apartment for even a month, and we were helping her to get a job. We actually had a job interview scheduled for her the day after she was murdered. Banks got the nickname Muffin because she loved blueberry muffins. She told her friends she hoped one day to compete on RuPaul's Drag Race. On October 15, 2021, around 10:50 p.m., Baton Rouge police arrived on scene to find 34-year-old Keeva Scatter dead of a gunshot to the head. Her body was in a grassy field in the 4100 block of West Brookstone in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Scatters was also misidentified by the police and subsequently by the news media. The Baton Rouge Police Department is continuing to investigate Scatter's death. So far, they have no suspects and no witnesses. Very little is known about Keeva's life or family, but a spokesperson from the Louisiana chapter of Mothers Demand Action said, "Our hearts break for Keeva's loved ones and the entire trans community today." Iris Santos was shot and killed approximately 9:30 p.m. on Friday, April 23, 2021, as she sat outside of a Chick-fil-A on a picnic bench when an unknown suspect approached and opened fire. Santos later died at a local hospital. Houston police released a video of a person believed to be the suspect. They described the man as African American, clean-shaven, wearing a dark-colored sweater and white or gray sweatpants. Santos was born and raised in Southwest Houston, the youngest child in her family, with two older sisters and an older brother. Ms. Santos had her mother's full support when she transitioned as a teenager in high school. Her mother said she wore a dress in ninth grade and was so happy. After high school graduation, Santos started an online business selling candles and soaps. She also did makeup consultation and provided tarot card readings for her clients. Her mother said the last time she saw her daughter on the Sunday before the murder, she was so excited and was planning to attend a big convention for people who did tarot card readings. Before we parted, her mother said, she hugged me extremely hard and kissed me and said goodbye, and she told me she loved me. Then she came back and hugged me a second time. On Transgender Remembrance Day, Ms. Santos' mother had a message for everyone. It read, "We'd be a different world if we all lived together and loved each other." Nedra Sequence Morris was shot and killed on Saturday, May 14, 2022 in Florida. She was 50 years old. Morris's body was found on an Opelika, Florida street with a gunshot wound to her head. Police have released few details about her murder, but Morris's family told local media that her body was dumped at an intersection after she was killed at an unknown location. The driver of a 2017 SUV that allegedly left the scene is being sought for questioning. Morris's murder is at least the 14th such killing of a trans person in the United States this year, and the second black trans woman killed in Florida since Duvall Princess was found dead in Jacksonville on January 3, 2022. Duvall Princess was a well-known and beloved member of the LGBTQ+ community in Jacksonville, Florida. The 24-year-old was also a popular hairstylist who specialized in wigs and weaves. According to her family, Princess had an outgoing personality and was a little firefly. Princess was in the midst of transitioning, and the media reporting of her death consistently referred to her by her male pronouns, which I find utterly disrespectful. According to the family, Princess was meeting someone on the night of her death. Surveillance videos show someone arriving, leaning into the car on both the passenger and the driver's side before getting into the passenger side of the car. Once they were in the car, there was a flash of a gun being fired. The suspect is still at large. Kitty Monroe's death was believed to have been the result of domestic violence. She was pronounced dead at the scene when police arrived early on the morning of June 29, 2022. A witness told the police they received a text from the victim saying a man was at her apartment and wouldn't leave. Police arrested Samuel Ward Jr. and charged him with voluntary manslaughter. In his confession, Ward told police that he had been inside Monroe's apartment and she had ordered him to leave and pulled a gun on him. Ward says they struggled. Both of them fell down the stairs, and then Ward took out his gun and shot Monroe several times. Monroe's family and friends called her a lover of people and animals. A friend said, "Kitty was beautiful, such a beautiful person. Her energy was always light and fun." I added Kitty Monroe to this list for two reasons. Though the case is technically solved, there hasn't been a trial and no final result. The other reason is due to the statistic that I read. According to a report by the Human Rights Commission Foundation, between 2013 and 2021, approximately 2/3 of transgender and non-gender conforming people who were murdered had their lives taken by an acquaintance, friend, family member, or intimate partner. Like many of you listening to this program, I was bullied as a younger person, and it's always been interesting to me how we tend to project our lack of understanding or our fears onto other people instead of confronting the source of our discomfort within ourselves. This lack of empathy can be deadly for trans and non-gender conforming people. Whether you understand what it means to be trans or non-gender conforming, it seems to me that if we all focused just on the things that we share in common, chiefly our humanity, perhaps the distance between us wouldn't seem so great. If you have any information on the unsolved murders of the people featured in this episode, please contact the authorities listed in the description below. I'll come back to the subject of trans women of color being murdered in later episodes, and I'll update you if any of these murders are solved. Thank you for joining me, and please be kind to yourself and to others. The world needs what you have to give.